Today is Thursday, October 31st. We'll tell you how a controversial joke at a Trump rally led to a controversial comment from President Biden and why that got former President Trump to ride in a garbage truck. Also, we'll explain the Supreme Court's decision about voter rolls in Virginia and why we may not know the winner of the presidential race for days after polls close. Plus, more data shows the economy doing well. Which city is celebrating a World Series win? And happy Halloween, how the holiday is growing around the world and where to get deals on treats all day. Those stories and even more news to know next. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. In the final sprint of their presidential campaigns, it seems Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump agree on at least one thing: which states will matter the most come Election Day. Both candidates campaigned in North Carolina and Wisconsin yesterday. Harris also added a stop in Pennsylvania, where Trump held a rally just one day earlier. Besides the usual issues, Harris and Trump both addressed a controversial comment President Biden made this week. Biden was responding to a comedian who spoke at a Trump rally and called Puerto Rico a floating pile of garbage, which sparked backlash. Well, Biden then said, quote, "The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters," referring to Trump supporters. Even though Biden is not actually running anymore, he still has a big impact on the 2024 race. That's why Vice President Harris is now trying to distance herself from Biden's comment, while former President Trump is trying to draw more attention to it. Harris told reporters she strongly disagrees with criticizing people based on who they vote for and promised to represent all Americans if she's elected. Meanwhile, Trump told supporters that Biden not only calls them garbage, but treats them like garbage, as an example of why Americans should vote for him instead. Trump leaned into it even more by holding a news conference from inside a Trump-branded trash truck. Today, both campaigns head west. The vice president plans to visit Nevada and Arizona, while the former president makes stops in Nevada and New Mexico. By the way, remember we told you the Washington Post decided not to endorse a presidential candidate this year? Well, since announcing that decision, the Post now says it lost at least 250,000 subscribers. The Los Angeles Times says it lost thousands of subscriptions for the same reason. But both are standing by their decisions, saying it should be up to voters to make up their own minds. And other newspapers are following suit now. In fact, America's largest newspaper chain, Gannett, is among those now deciding not to endorse either Harris nor Trump. Gannett says instead, each of its papers can decide to make endorsements locally. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in a split 6-3 decision that it's okay for Virginia to purge certain voter registrations ahead of Election Day. It means thousands of voters removed from the rolls will not be added back. The purge comes from Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin's executive order that he says was meant to keep non-citizens from voting. He called the High Court's decision, quote, "a victory for common sense and election fairness." The Justice Department had challenged the order, at least in part due to a law that requires a 90-day quiet period. It basically says states cannot start tweaking voter rolls right before an election, since if mistakes are made, there might not be enough time to fix them. So bottom line, the real concern is that eligible citizens might lose their rights and not get their votes counted. Some point to state data that show voting by non-citizens is rare and that minority voters end up getting impacted the most. Virginia's governor, though, says if voters feel they were improperly taken off the rolls, they can still vote since the state offers same-day registration. Spain is dealing with its worst flooding disaster in decades. Huge rains swept southern and eastern Spain and have killed at least 95 people, with more missing. The catastrophic floods have washed away cars, ruined homes, and turned village streets into rivers in the European nation. The country's National Weather Service said it rained more in 8 hours in the popular tourist destination of Valencia this week than the previous 20 months altogether. About 1,000 soldiers from Spain's emergency response units have now been deployed to affected areas, and reports say rescuers waded through neck-high waters to reach some residents. And even as these reports came out, the rain was still falling, expected to continue at least until today. Police in China seem to be cracking down on public Halloween celebrations in some of the country's biggest cities. The holiday is fairly new to China, but reports say young people are using costumes as a way to express themselves and sometimes send subtle political messages. And keep in mind, this is a communist country where political dissent is not tolerated. Well, after unusually rowdy and politically charged celebrations last year, this year's parties have been met with a show of force from police. But in other parts of the world, the popularity of Halloween continues to grow without some of those same restrictions. The UK, for example, is apparently preparing for some of its biggest celebrations yet. And consumer experts in Australia say the holiday's popularity has surged the last 5 years. Of course, right here in the US, the holiday is huge. The most recent survey shows about 3 out of 4 Americans will celebrate Halloween in some way. Americans were expected to spend over $11 billion on costumes, candies, and decor. Restaurant chains around the country are hoping to cash in on the celebrations, too. Baskin-Robbins, for example, is offering 31% off all ice cream scoops today. Chipotle's Burrito deal offers a $6 entree to any loyalty program member who places an order in costume. And Papa John's is offering a $10 jack-o'-lantern pizza, just to name a few. And for those of you who are preparing to trick-or-treat tonight, many experts are reminding families that the biggest risk to kids is not actually candy from strangers, but cars at night. Kids are said to be twice as likely than usual to be hit by a car on Halloween. So don't forget to decorate costumes with reflective tape or carry flashlights and use sidewalks and crosswalks. And for those driving around tonight, be extra aware. We hope you all have a safe and happy Halloween. We have much more news for you still coming up, but first a quick break to thank our sponsor. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. As I've been using it, I've learned so much about how my metabolism and body works, and I love how easy and fun Lumen is to use. Again, all you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll see what's going on with your metabolism. Then on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you get real-time data and recommendations. Your metabolism is actually your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into fuel that keeps you going. This is the type of technology that used to only be available to top athletes in clinics, but now Lumen makes lab-level metabolic testing accessible. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/newsworthy to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/newsworthy for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Now back to the news. It's not just Halloween today. Nearly 1 billion people around the world are starting to celebrate Diwali today, also known as the Festival of Lights. The festival is one of the most important holidays for people in India, and Hindus in particular, though people from other faiths celebrate Diwali too. In fact, millions of people celebrate in the U.S., and for the first time ever, kids in the largest public school district in the nation, in New York City, will have tomorrow off school in honor of the festival. Traditionally, Diwali takes place over 5 days, but some observers celebrate over a shorter time period, like 2 or even a single day. The holiday is marked by rows of lights or clay lamps outside their homes, symbolizing good over evil and guarding against spiritual darkness. Other traditions include sharing sweets, cleaning, exchanging gifts, and more. A new study is putting a number on the amount of screen time it takes for teens to be much more likely to feel anxious or depressed. The National Center for Health Statistics found teenagers who looked at screens more than 4 hours every day, not including for schoolwork, were much more likely to experience anxiety and depression than those who had less screen time. It specifically looked at kids between 12 and 17 years old and asked about their screen time from 2021 to 2023. It turns out about half of all teenagers looked at screens longer than 4 hours every day. And of those, about 1 in 4 experienced a period of anxiety or depression in the 2 weeks before the survey. That does not necessarily mean the screen time caused the anxiety and depression, but the survey also found that teens who spent less time looking at screens experienced significantly lower rates of anxious and depressed feelings. Mental health experts note the reasons for the association are complex, but may include online bullying and negative messaging about body image. Ultimately, the American Academy of Pediatrics does not set a hard limit on how much screen time is healthy for kids. Instead, it suggests parents focus more on the quality of children's time spent in interacting with technology. We told you yesterday Americans have more confidence in the economy than they have for years. Now, the latest data seems to back up that feeling. A new GDP report showed the U.S. economy kept growing throughout the late summer, despite some economists' fear of a looming recession. Overall, the GDP rose almost 3% from July to September, indicating a healthy level of expansion. The summer numbers continue a 2-year trend of expansion, despite high interest rates that made borrowing money less appealing. And a lot of the growth is due to consumer spending, which lines up with how people reported feeling about the economic outlook. Of course, it's not completely great news in all sectors of the economy. Housing slowed down, for example, because construction has declined. Imports also lagged behind other areas. But overall, the numbers show an economy that's in pretty good shape. The Los Angeles Dodgers are this year's World Series champions, and they won it all by becoming the first team ever to come back from 5 runs down to clinch the title. Ultimately, the Dodgers beat the New York Yankees last night 7-6. It marks their 8th title now, and their first since the COVID-shortened 2020 season. It was the first full-season championship for the Dodgers since 1988. First baseman Freddie Freeman got the MVP award for the series after hitting home runs in each of the first 4 games, including a game-winning grand slam in Game 1. The Dodgers' record-setting star player, Shohei Ohtani, did not have much of an impact after suffering a partially dislocated shoulder in Game 2. But it didn't matter. The Dodgers will celebrate their title with a parade through downtown Los Angeles Friday morning. Well, that's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Thing to Know Thursday. But first, a quick break for our sponsor. Whether it's a fall wedding or the holiday season coming up, it's that time of year where we have more reasons to dress up. And listen, we don't have to live in fear of form-fitting dresses. With Honeylove, you can feel your best at every occasion. Honeylove uses targeted compression to enhance your curves instead of squeezing them. You'll feel hugged, not suffocated. I used to feel nervous every time I put on shapewear because I dreaded tugging at it all night long. Not anymore. I can tell you from experience, Honeylove shapewear does not roll down or roll up like others do, no matter how much you hit the dance floor. Plus, Honeylove has more than just sculptwear. They have incredibly comfortable bodysuits, bras, tanks, and leggings for everyday support. I'm literally wearing their Legging 2.0 as I record this because they are my favorite leggings in my closet. Treat yourself to the best bras, shapewear, leggings, and more on the market and save 20% off at honeylove.com/newsworthy. Use our exclusive link to get 20% off at honeylove.com/newsworthy. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them, so please support our show and let them know we sent you. Say yes to every adventure with Honeylove. Okay, now back to Thing to Know Thursday. So many people may feel anxious to know the results of next Tuesday's election as soon as possible, but finding out who won may require a little patience. Polls predict an especially tight race between former President Trump and Vice President Harris. And so it's possible we won't know the winner until days after the election. Whether we know by Wednesday morning or it takes much more time, neither timeline means there's a problem with the results or indicates fraud. It simply means counting all the votes takes time because different states have different requirements for submitting and tallying the ballots. For example, 18 states require mail-in ballots to be postmarked by Election Day, but that means they could arrive and still be valid days after in-person votes are counted. And states also have their own laws setting deadlines for counting votes. So in some cases, like in the battleground state of Pennsylvania, states must finish counting ballots 1 week after the election. But other states allow 3 to 4 weeks to finish counting. All that to say, in a close election with millions of people voting early or by mail, there's a chance we won't know the winner until days, maybe even weeks after election night. And that's normal and expected. All right, thank you so much for listening today and making us part of your daily routine. We'll catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.